My name is Tom Hollingsworth, and I am very happy to be bringing you a delegate roundtable. So I'm going to open up this roundtable to all of our delegates, both here in the room and joining us remotely, as we discuss something that I think has a lot of people asking questions. What does the future of wireless look like when we have network as a service companies like Nile and Meter and Ramen who are purporting to just take care of all of that for us? Now, yes, I know that it is relatively easy to just hand somebody a map and say, you need to hang an AP here, and here, and here. And everything just works. And that was the sound of every wireless person on the planet reaching for the comments because they're about to light me up. It's not that easy. But is it that easy before you tell people where to hang the APs? Or after? Because from my experience, the art in Wi-Fi is how you design the network. And I think that that is where the point of contention is with most of the people in this room and many of you watching out there at home. Can a network as a service company replicate Wi-Fi design? So there it is, folks. Let's talk about this idea. Why does everybody feel so combative when a company like Nile walks in here and says, you guys don't need to worry about that, we'll take care of it?
I'll use your art reference as a first example. I can ask you to draw a can of soup, or I can ask Andy Warhol to draw a can of soup, or I can ask Picasso to draw a can of soup. When it comes to the person who's actually doing the installation and the physical component of it, that makes a big difference to me. So all of the automation stuff works up until the point that someone has to physically go and install it and make the equipment do what you have designed it to do. So that's where I see the first big flaw. But other than that, I love it. I love that we're at a point where people can offer a service that says it just works, and if it doesn't, then bill me, or I'll bill you. Turn it into an SLA. I think it's a generational thing that we're scared to give up control. But you know, I remember when I got my first self-driving car, right? It took forever before I didn't want to put my hands on the wheel because I was scared it was going to crash into something. And now we're at this point where I feel more comfortable with my hands off the wheel than I did with my hands on the wheel. But that's just me, the younger version of the geezer.
Now, Drew, would you feel comfortable getting into, I don't know, a $10,000 self-driving EV?
Ooh.
I mean, you just said that EVs have reached a point where you feel comfortable taking your hands off the wheel. All I did was lower the price point.
Can I interject there a second before he answers?
No. I said it. I didn't say Tesla. I said a different EV. But go ahead, Kerry.
I want to interject because I think this is less about design, I think, because that's not what Nile's touting. Nile is saying you still need to do the design, but then once it's implemented, we just run it. The $10,000 EV versus the Tesla EV, that's the design front, right? That's the, trusting the Tesla is the billions and billions of dollars of investment they've made in design, and then the automation is the operation of it. In this case, it's $10,000 EV might not be well designed, and of course, then the operation isn't going to go very well.
Lee?
In the Tesla example there, though, they've got mountains of data from a pool of vehicles that they're using to train the AI and the knowledge base, right? So, lowering that price point, at what point does another company catch up with that knowledge, right? And, I think from a network perspective, right, there isn't a one size fits all. Some people want the control. Some people are much more willing to take their hands off.
Lee, what were you going to say?
Well, the other part that keeps getting touted is the lowered cost. If you go to the Nile website, up to 60% savings on TCO. That I struggle with. It's like, okay, how do you prove that? And I'm guessing they have case studies, but I've sat in any number of TCO briefings that fall apart when you start applying them to your own situation. So the TCO thing has me scratching my head. But the other part of this is back to your EV model and all of that. And can they make it work? Yeah, they can make it work. You're going to plug it in and it's going to work. Is it going to work under heavy load? Is it going to work overtime? What are the problems going to be? How responsive is everybody in the chain, and everybody in the chain is less your expertise, and now you're reliant on the partner because Niall says it's really, your success is dependent on your partner. So are you willing to trade your IT department for some partner and trust them? Because Niall isn't going to hold the bag according to Niall, but this is all okay with Drew.
So
Drew says it's all okay.
Well, it depends on your partner.
We're obviously making this about one particular company that presented here at Field Day, which we're fresh off of that. But I want to back the truck up because you bring up an interesting point, Lee, and I do have a question for you. How many ECSE trained individuals do you have in your IT department right now? And I'm using that as an example because ECSE is kind of considered one of the gold standard like wireless design credentials in the industry right now. Do you have 10? Do you have 20?
Well, we ditched it and we went with another vendor in that category.
How many of those trained vendors do you have right now?
Two, which is all we need.
So not everybody in your department needs to be trained in this particular discipline in order to be able to deploy things, right?
Right.
So why are we saying that it's bad when a company walks in and says, you don't need to worry about this because we can take care of it?
There's design, and then there's running it. And I'm talking about
operational.
Anybody come in, I'm
Do you
talking about
need to be certified in design to operate a network? Do I need to know how to do open heart surgery to be able to do cardio? Because I'm operating my heart at that point. I don't need to know how to repair it in case something goes wrong with it.
Does the patient care?
Well, again, I
As long
think
as they survive.
I don't think any of them are touting, maybe they are, but they're not removing let's stick with the Wi-Fi example. They're not removing the Wi-Fi design requirement. They're not saying, just drop APs in and we're going to be good. They actually, Niall specifically said, you still need to do a site survey. So that's the design front. And I think, like many things, right? If you do the design and you get that right, building on top of that and operating the network does get easier. So why can't it be?
How much does a good Wi-Fi design cost?
Yeah, but hold on. But does Niall include? So I know metered. That's all included. That's part of the service offering. Isn't that part of the service offering with Niall as well, where they provide all of that for you? They're not saying get rid of it. They're just saying let us handle everything. Let us get you what you need in order to get the outcome that you're expecting. And we're going to bill you accordingly. And if you don't have the outcome that you're expecting, then that's where we have an issue. That's kind of the service model of both of them, right? So they're not saying get rid of the design, the engineering, and understanding how. They're just saying, don't worry about that. We will handle everything that it needs to make your network work. Now, do you care if they do an Ekahau design or a Hamina design? No, because they're the ones who are ultimately responsible for it working or not working.
What, Scott?
I'm going to pop. Everybody keeps talking about design and trying to separate design and operation. And to a degree, you can't really do that. Because specifically, one of the examples that we were talking about in the session was talking about things like what data rates are available, and I think we kind of got taught, I think we might have gotten a little caught up in thinking about things like, are we going to enable 802.11b data rates or something? Mm-hmm. But I mean, a lot of networks, we turn off like 6 and 12, and then we start everything at 24 megabits as the lowest minimum basic rate for whatever design reasons that we have, but that becomes an operational component that they're talking about, they'll handle all of that. And I'm like, but that's not really, that's like, has 1 foot in design and 1 foot in operation. And they're trying to like take that out and say, no, you don't have to worry about that. It's like, but our stuff works better this way. How do they decide which to do? And there's no visibility.
What is better? Define better.
What works best for my particular environment.
But how do I quantify that?
Visibility.
Into what?
Which they provide. They provide that visibility.
What kind of visibility?
I'm the devil's advocate. They're the ones who are saying, look, don't worry about what protocol, don't worry about what channel size, don't worry about any of that. That's going to be handled in a way that will deliver the quality of service that you're expecting. And if that doesn't meet your SLA, then you don't pay.
What SLA?
The SLA that Niall is providing to you.
Which has what in it?
Who's defining the SLAs?
You guys are almost there.
Them.
Where's the roaming SLA that tells me how well clients are roaming between APs and that they're not losing any packets?
And how do you define whether or not things are better?
you don't care if the packets are roaming or not roaming or what frequency they're on. What you care about is the user able to do the job that they
And
are
that's
trying
one of the
to do?
ways I discovered that.
But it comes back to if the user can do their job, or if their function or the users are happy with the network now, who's to say that I can't reduce my costs and reduce overhead
Yeah.
by putting in smaller APs, by putting in fewer APs?
Part of the problem with this, the whole messaging is if the users are happy, all is good. Users would be blissfully happy if we took away half of our security policies and let them do all kinds of crazy stuff. So is that what we should do because it would make the users happy? I mean, are we like going for client happiness in this big utopia of are they happy, or are we going to what are our operational goals and how do we translate those to technical policy?
How do you measure user happiness, Lee?
Well, not happiness. It's
No?
ability
Is
to do
user-
their job.
Is user happiness what
Within
matters?
the
'Cause-
framework, within the construct of them being able to do their job, they can connect without really having to think about what's going on with the network.
Let me
In
flip
the
the question.
construct of using their job.
How do you
Now,
know when a
the
user's
construct,
unhappy?
They
Trouble
complain.
tickets.
Ticket.
Thank you. The
But they
reason
also
why
complain-
the reason why
they
we're
also
debating all of
complain-
this.
Right, they also complain when they want to do things that the network doesn't allow by policy, by security policy, by operational rules.
So
And
what do
the
they
two
do
of
then?
them-
Yeah.
And the two of them are often conflated to be performance issues. I can't do blah, 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 the network sucks.
Yeah, I can't drive my Corvette 150 because the road outside of my house has potholes in it. Is it the Corvette's fault or is it the people who fix the street? The thing is that, and this is one of the things we have to get back to because you guys keep talking about SLAs, you keep talking about user happiness, you keep talking about performance. All of those things have numbers associated with them, right? So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
We all have laptops, right? Like what kind of MacBook do you have, Scott? What's the chip in it?
M2.
An M2. Did you buy an M4?
No,
Why?
I don't need it.
Because?
This one does everything I need.
So it's fast enough, right?
Yes.
How much faster is an M4 than your laptop?
I think like 60% or something.
Nope, 15.
Oh, 15?
If you look at the cadence of releases of things like chips recently with over the last 5 years, every generation of chip is 15% faster than the one before it. Not 50, not 5, 15. Do you know why? 15 is just when you start to notice that it's faster. How do you know that your Wi-Fi is faster? You don't, unless you run a speed test, right? How do you know if your users are happy? Well, if you had 50 trouble tickets last month and you have 20 trouble tickets this month, your users must have gotten happier, right? Or at least you've solved some issues that would make them unhappy.
Or they just stopped complaining
Yeah.
because
So-
it's been broken for so
They
long.
started
This goes into that whole
Parity.
total cost of ownership discussion that you were talking about, Lee. When I walk in and I say, I can increase your TCO, or I can reduce your TCO by 60% and increase user happiness and performance, what you're going to do is say, show me. I want to see the numbers. And I think that this is where we're getting back to the discussion of why are people kind of like butting up against this idea of someone else walking in and doing these things for me? Is because right now in your network, and in my network, I can pull the stats. I can say, our internet pipe is running at 90% utilization. Our airtime fairness is a made-up number that somebody came up with to measure it. And if those numbers are consistent across whatever and my users are happy, then I'm good enough and I don't need your solution. But if we're starting to see things like latency spikes or drops in coverage or stuff like that, I can pull that information and say, I need to add more APs over here, or I need to redesign this or something like that. When it comes to a company that's doing this for me, all I have to go on is when my users tell me that something doesn't work right.
Well,
And
that's
that
not necessarily
causes
true.
problems
That's-
for operations teams.
That's only with Nile, right? Because Nile was today in their presentation, and when we discussed this, we talked about exposing that and the clients being able to see that. If you look at Ramen and you look at any of the other, Meter and anyone else, that's there. You have full dashboard access where you can see every metric that you possibly want to know, and you can interact with it in ways that don't require a PhD to figure out what to do. You can do clear text language models and just have a conversation with your network. So I think that's a Nile specific thing. But I think the point, and I heard you all talking about it also, is it's like you're not paying for the configuration and the administration. You're not paying for it to run your network. You're not paying for that. What you're paying for is the report showing you that it's doing a good job. That's where the payment component comes in. Trouble tickets are down, service is good.
But why?
You're also paying for hardware. You're paying for switches. You're paying for whatever their edge appliances are.
No.
You're paying. What I'm saying is you're renting them. Whatever.
No, you're paying for the report.
Yours are coming out. Theirs are going in.
Yeah, but that's
your stuff is coming out. Their stuff is coming in.
That's a good segue to the
and
Cisco
it
presentation.
Costs something. You are paying somebody for networking, and your legacy networking is coming out. And my premise, my thing there is, how the hell do I know if it's going to be cheaper? That has not been. That's where the TCO stuff starts to fall apart. I get my switches at these ridiculous discounts. I get my APs at these ridiculous discounts.
15 years ago, this buddy of mine named Jim Tennant said this thing when he was working for a company called ShoreTel that had started up in the phone industry. And he said, if you're paying for hardware, if you're buying hardware, you're already a sucker. And if you think about where everything is going, all of that technology that you're investing money into, everything is moving to that license spot, to where people are just paying the annual recurring revenue for having access to the equipment. My point is that you're paying for the report and the access points that are installed and the switches that are installed. All that's doing is facilitating that report that says it's working the way that it's supposed to.
However you want to convince yourself that you're not paying for this stuff. Some amount of money is leaving your hands and going to someone else.
Absolutely.
And my point is for somebody to walk up and say, I know nothing about your environment, but I'm going to save you 60%. They are, half of what they're selling is snake oil.
Look, what happens when you stop paying them?
They come and get it.
I want to know about Cisco.
Come pick it up.
Hold on. Let's let Kerry finish his thought.
Well, I think they're talking about cost savings because they have to. I don't think that's the sales pitch. The sales pitch isn't cost savings.
It's like cloud.
It's operational simplicity. It's
yes.
So if you think about it, maybe you don't save a single dollar. Maybe it doesn't cost any less. Maybe it even costs a little bit more. But now you have somebody you can hold accountable. And accountability is difficult with your own staff. If they're, you can fire them, you can do all sorts of things. But true accountability is really hard if it's your own IT staff.
Hey,
it's a lot easier when it's a third party.
When's the last time you got an ISP to give you money back on a violated SLA?
Never.
So it turns out that even though I'm violating the SLA, I can't make you hold accountable for it other than to say, oh, well, you'll give me like a few free days next week or something, or next month or something like that.
But it's still a measure of accountability. I just don't think that. I think they have to talk about TCO and savings because that's what's going to get people's attention.
Quick.
I don't think that's really.
Show of hands. Who in here cares about TCO? I guarantee you that nobody in here who didn't raise their hands has the word C in their job title anywhere because nobody at the C level cares anything about packet loss, about dropouts. You know what they care about? Money.
Right. But again, so that's why they have to sell it that way.
Right.
The reality
because they're not selling it to you. They're selling it to the people in the boardroom who decide whether or not you guys have a job next week.
And operationally, if it gets easier, that theoretically will lead to staff savings. It'll lead to a number of different things. I just think it's. I know why they're selling it that way. I just don't think it's.
Mark, what were you going to say?
At the meter event they had a month ago, Drew and I were there. They went down this route and didn't talk price. Drew pushed him for a price, and he threw out a number, and we all were taken back by it. But it really comes down to it's not about the numbers for these guys. They're trying to improve things. Wi-Fi 7, as an industry, we look at Wi-Fi 7 with MLO and all these different things. MLO, the real benefit we're finding is it lowers your latency. What is Wi-Fi 7 802 BE, right?
BE. Yep.
802.11be. What is its other name? Enhanced, or what's the word?
Enhanced high throughput?
No, they're like higher throughput, and then HE became
Higher
AX
efficiency.
was high efficiency.
High efficiency.
X.
We're looking at efficiency. So the industry, we're adjusting these technologies according to whatever the current view
Why do we
is.
call it Wi-Fi 7 and not 802.11be?
Because
That's
people
old.
told us to.
Consumers.
Because it turns out that people
Marketing.
get confused by letters and numbers that sound the same, but if I put numbers on things, people want to buy it when it's sitting on that store shelf in Best Buy.
Isn't Wi-Fi 7 letters and numbers?
It is, but not the confusing letters and numbers that are all the same. Is BE better than Q?
You automatically know that 7 is higher than 6, so it must
Exactly.
be better,
That's
right?
right. It makes it way easier.
And that's the thing, though, is a lot of the times that we're running into these problems where we're the ones sitting here jousting with the companies who are trying to fix these problems, we're jousting at the wrong animal, right? Like we literally
At the
spent
wrong level.
we spent the entire presentation asking technical questions, which is what we do at Field Day. If you don't know that that's what we do, congratulations, this is your introduction to it. But we're curious about the things that we've run into, right? How do you handle it when a rat chews through an Ethernet cable? What's going to happen when someone hangs an AP in the wrong spot? Because that's never happened before, right? Construction companies would never move it a foot to the left because it was just easier. And yet, the people who make the decisions about whether or not to go with a solution over one from Cisco, Extreme, Juniper, whomever, don't care.
That's Tom,
It's
I
a
totally
binary
agree with you.
decision.
It's absolutely a point where this is that, I don't want to call it the suits versus the nerds, right? Because we're all this weird combination of both. But these conversations that are going to happen at the C level that Niall's going to have and that Meter's going to have and that Raman's going to have, those conversations are going to be held at this level where our opinion isn't going to matter as much as what they see happening on the bottom line. Lee, assuming that there is some type of savings, there's the asterisk I would put for Badman.
I hate to quote Endgame here, but all of the legions of operations and engineering people are the Scarlet Witch on that battlefield. You took everything from me, and the executive is like, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah, who are you? Yeah. No, we're just all sitting here watching it happen, right? And we're questioning them about rearranging the chairs in the Titanic, right? Isn't that the same?
Well, it's also,
Well, how are we going to do this? Meanwhile,
Carrie?
like, we're debating this because I hate to say it's revolutionary. It's not. As a service offerings aren't revolutionary, but this is vastly different than anything else that anybody is doing. Cisco's presentation today was awesome. They have amazing technology. They're doing really cool things. Their access points are amazing. How much have we debated it?
well,
Zero.
I do want to talk about them though, because they said some stuff today that was like big red flag for me, man.
They did, but my
Yes.
point is just that if this finds traction, if this approach finds traction, it is a revolutionary moment in how organizations consume networking effectively as a utility.
We've been here before. I like the analogy that's been invoked by both Niall and Meter, electricity industry. It used to be you had to manually install electricity at the location, and it's pretty much was a precursor to what we're going through today with network connectivity. So the goal is to create an experience where buying network connectivity is somewhat akin to buying electricity today. And so that kind of sets a foundation for, okay, what is it, the experience we want to create, and some of the CXOs out there would, endorse it more. And I think, looking to the future, to your point, Carrie, the momentum is going that way. I think you can look at the consensus out there. The NAS market is going to grow at double-digit CAGR over the next several years. It'll be over $100 billion by the end of this decade because of all the things we talked about there. It's the combination of new intelligence, AI-enabled capabilities, whether it's talking in natural language to the network to solve a lot of these problems that can take days, weeks, months doing with the established ways. And I like what Suresh says. It's like you're doing this because the network vendors have instructed you. This is how you have to do it.
And us.
It's ingrained. Yeah.
We're the one. We're at risk. We're the ones fighting it. You're like, no,
Right.
you absolutely need that.
So,
And to think that the posturing that Cisco's doing, and today that's the part that I got out of that conversation, is that it takes a flip of the switch at Cisco or at Aruba for them to turn their entire business model into exactly what Niall's doing and exactly what Meter's doing. All it takes is a management decision to say, this is the way that we're pointing the ship. Now, granted, there's a lot of partners and there's a lot of channel conflict and there's a lot of stuff that'll happen because of that. But those pieces are being set in motion right now. In my opinion, I looked at what Cisco said about the Wi-Fi 7 AP, and you look at single PID, and then they start talking, well, you get all these great things with your licensing now, and here's some more stuff that goes into your licensing, and here's the bonus of the licensing. And it's like, okay, well, hold on. I want what I just want to buy it and put it on my network and have it work. I don't want to pay the licensing for this. How close are we to Cisco saying, well, that's not the case anymore? This is now the new Cisco is, well, all of this licensing is included, so you have to pay for the licensing to keep it working. You don't really own the equipment. And then 2 years down the road, Cisco comes out and they say, oh, guess what, guys? We're now doing campus network as a service. We're going to make it easier. We're going to cut the cost on it by getting rid of your partners, by getting rid of your channel. Like, at what point does that happen with the big names? So as we're talking about it, I watched that Cisco presentation today, and I was like, man, this is, if you come from that mindset, maybe that's like a little conspiracy theorist, right? But if you look at it and you go, well, if this is where the destination is, that Meter's there and Niall's there and Ramen's there, then you look at the way that other people are starting to move in that same direction. It's not, the writing's on the wall.
What do you mean starting to move? Chuck's been trying to do this with Cisco since John Chambers left.
I'm trying to say devil's advocate. I'm trying to play devil's advocate over here because from this seat, it looks like, how much longer are partners like, the big partners, big Cisco partners out there, the big VARs, what value do they bring to the table in a world of Nile and Meter?
I don't know. Why don't you go ask Broadcom what value partners have? Because what happens? What happens when a company decides that they're going to completely do away with their partner-driven model? We've seen that from Broadcom and VMware, right? There was a lot of teeth gnashing. There was a lot of situations that were going on where people were just flat out mad. Now, we're back to a kind of a weird kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like, standoff kind of thing, where there's obviously value in those partners because you cannot make the organization big enough to deal with every company that you need to deal with. Oh, yes, I would love to sell to Boeing and FedEx and UPS and all those other companies. Do you want to go out and sell to, the general store on the corner who will buy that equipment maybe once every 10 years?
Well, you offer them a different level of service. You're not giving them the white glove treatment. You're shipping product from your warehouse to their warehouse.
But that's the thing, though. That's not what companies like Nile and Meter and Ramen are saying. They're saying we're going to go out there and for that one-person shop, for that 5-person shop, we're going to handle everything for them. I don't necessarily know that that's the best solution for a company that needs to address that whole market because, I will not be the first person to admit this out loud, but Cisco has 5 customers that they care about. The fact that all of the other things that they develop for those 5 customers are useful to a whole other group of people, it's icing on the cake for them. Because when Boeing comes to them and says, I want this thing to do this thing, do you know what the answer is? You got it. Whatever it takes to close that next sale. And so we're seeing, but we've flipped that script on its head because of things like cloud computing. So for anybody who doesn't believe that, I want you to log into your AWS networking portal and I want you to click the vMotion button.
To Drew's point, how are networking companies going to make money in this brave new world? And both Cisco and Nile pointed to it. Networking hardware and equipment will become increasingly commoditized. Security. They're looking at security as a way to increase, their
but at
monetizing.
the same time, I'm one of those stalwarts that believes that you shouldn't charge extra for security. It should just be something that you do. Especially if you're going to collect so much of my data and hold on to it. I don't want that getting out because I had nothing to do with you collecting it in the first place.
Fair point. I'm just invoking what they're pointing to.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
All right. We're just about where we need to be to wrap this up because we probably could have gone on for another hour with these discussions. But the important thing is that 9 people sitting around a table today aren't going to be the ones that are going to solve this problem. People like you are going to be the ones that solve the problem because there's a lot more of you than there are of us. While we might be asking the right questions in here of the companies that are presenting to us, you're the customers that they're going to listen to. So when they come to you and they say, well, we'll reduce your total cost of ownership and we'll give you all of these features and we'll do whatever you want, hold their feet to the fire. Great. I need you to give me a list. I need you to tell me all of the things that you're going to do to make my life better and hold them to it. I was joking a little bit with Carrie when I said it, but if a company violates their SLA all the time, then whatever they're doing right now is their SLA. If they tell you they're going to give you 95% uptime and they only give you 85% and you never push back on them, then 85% is their SLA. And anything more than that is just a bonus. You can better believe that when my home internet goes down, I have them on speed dial and I'm not afraid to tell them about what they need to do to fix it. But at the end of the day, I'm just one person pushing back against companies that seem to have discovered the new way of doing things. Will that happen? Time will tell. I keep hearing how AI is going to transform the industry and it's going to make our world a better place. Oh, sorry, that's right, I forgot. That was SDN in 2012. And no, it didn't. And we're in a different place now. But the key point is that we're progressing.